Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow. All right, welcome everyone back to The Sideshow. This session is Mark's to take. So, Mark, what do you have for us today?
Thanks, Mike. I am bringing to the table Led Zeppelin's sixth album, Physical Graffiti, and I would like to focus today on side 3 of that album. It was a double album. One of my favorite albums of all time. It's my favorite Led Zeppelin album. I enjoy a number of them, and we're talking about a number of very good albums. Just the volume of songs in here that I truly enjoy, and is just puts it on the top of my list. And side 3, I certainly hone in as my favorite side. It was released in February of 1975, actually delayed a little bit, not because of any recording work that they were doing, but the cover of the album itself proved to be very difficult to manufacture. And we'll take a look at that a little later. It was the first album that was put out on Led Zeppelin's new label, Swan Song. So it was not only a musical adventure for them, but a business venture for them. And it came out of some recordings. They went into the countryside to an estate called Headley Grange and did some recording. And they ended up with 8 songs that, as it turns out, was longer than could fit onto an album. In fact, it was almost 3 sides of an album long. They didn't want to cut any of the material, so they instead decided to add some tracks that had been left over from the 3 previous albums. That they had done. And I mean, we'll talk a little bit about some of the ones that were early recordings and not. I think that it's not that these were throwaway songs. Led Zeppelin had a lot of good material, and it created a great double album here, who for the most part was really good from start to finish. And I focus on side 3, 4 songs on this side, not the biggest hits, I guess, of the album. I would say Physical Graffiti, the by far favorite track from listeners. Most famous track is Kashmir, which is if you take a look at anything from record play to the number of streams on Spotify, far dominates anything on the rest of the album. But I think that as a whole side 3, really brings together 4 songs that are a great listening experience. So we'll talk about them. But before we do, Mike, I know that you've spent a lot of time listening to this album as well.
And we've talked about this before. I would put Led Zeppelin 4 as Led Zeppelin's best album, and I would put Physical Graffiti
I've heard that.
At number 2. But if I could only take one Led Zeppelin album to the desert island, I would pick Physical Graffiti. Because Physical Graffiti, for the most part, sustains 4 sides of music. I think the first 3 sides are a little stronger than the 4th side, but the 4th side still has no real clinker, no real filler. It may be filler compared to some of Led Zeppelin, stuff like Kashmir, but not what I would really consider filler. And And side three is, I mean, arguably the best of those sides. I mean, I
Yeah.
normally, side two I would look to,
Hmm.
uh, uh, which is the one that Kashmir is on.
Yeah.
But the the songs are more unique. They're uniquely Zeppelin, but they're also unique in the context of Led Zeppelin. Um, uh, but at the same time, manage to kind of keep the Zeppelin approach. You know,
Yeah.
there's fairly riff heavy, or certainly in the light and 10 Years Gone, very riff heavy.
Yes.
So and the
Jimmy Page is
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Down by the Seaside still has that Zeppelin guitar feel to it. Just the texture of the guitar is definitely Zeppelin, although it's not that same riffathon style
Yeah.
as some of the others. No, I think it's a great side. Um, and Headley Grange was they did recording there for other. I mean, like Houses of the Holy. Some of the material
Yeah.
from that album was recorded at Headley Grange, and that was there were a number of places like the Bram Yar, which is the title for the acoustic guitar
Hmm.
piece on side three. That's a place in Wales where
Hmm.
they would go and kind of hang out, and then Bram Yar Stomp on Led Zeppelin 3. So there's different places yield different inspiration for Zeppelin, and going to Wales, going to Headley Grange, as opposed to just recording in London. They went to different places, and it
Yeah.
sometimes resulted in different feels to their music. But how Physical Graffiti is a fantastic album, and there's no question side three is standing alone is a fantastic side of classic rock music.
Well, and it also the one of the kind of the final reason honing in on that because there are a number of good sides. I'd agree with you. If I was going to focus on one of the other sides, it would be side one or side two. Uh, uh, I would say that side four was probably the softest of those, but still a very good experience. But as far as a side and our whole notion, the purpose of our podcast here in the first place is the notion of a side of music, especially experiencing it as one experience. 22, 23 minutes of music to sit down and listen to it. This is a classic example of that, about how that fits together. And I would encourage anybody that, a lot of people that maybe listen to this are familiar with the music and certainly familiar with Led Zeppelin. But if you haven't heard it in a while, or if you haven't experienced it, this is a great one to put this side on and alone with some headphones on and listen to it. That said, it's also great for the background of a party. It's got enough variety. It's got even though there's some softer songs on it. With Brahmyar is a good example. It's not sleepy. It's soft and it moves, but it's not sleepy. Great in the back of a party and excellent hangover music. To put on in the morning while you're trying to get your head together and get your place straightened up from a party the night before. It hangs very well together as a side. And even if you tried, although the songs are not related in any way, the first and last track, the first track being In the Light and the last being 10 Years Gone, are both focused on time, right? And the two middle tracks. So you've got the bookends, and the tracks in the middle are both focused on places. And so you can think of it that way. And even the way that they start the first song In the Light is about looking forward in time, and then to the rest of the album. The last song, 10 Years Gone, is really about looking back. So it really does those provide good bookends to a side that is a great single listening experience, which is why I like it. So let's kind of talk about some of the individual tracks. It starts. The first song is In the Light, and this starts out with kind of a very almost spooky lead in. The song was originally called In the Morning, And although I did not know that till years later, I always thought about this song as being in the morning, especially kind of a foggy morning near a lake. The way that it there's kind of a drone of a bagpipe in the background, and then some keyboard that almost sounds like loons sounding across the lake. It's kind of a the day is very slowly and calmly starting with this lead, and it's kind of a spooky feel that goes on for almost 3 minutes before before the song itself kicks in with some just classic, just standard Jimmy Page riffs that drive the song. And there's kind of once that lead in is done, there's really four parts to the song, which are really two different types of music. This Jimmy Page riff that gets the song going, and then it transitions into kind of a different type of guitar and organ type feel that we listened to for a little while. Transitions back into this stronger riff, and then takes us out in the end with that same second section guitar. So it moves us back and forth into some different feelings, yet it seems to bring together.
Well, the intro section, and then the kind of the middle section with the keyboards. I mean, the John Paul Jones, sort of keyboard, organ, clavinet sound it's there. You can hear it in the beginning, and then in that, after the guitar comes in, and then there's the middle set, the four. You got intro, beginning, middle, end. So what I'm calling the middle section.
Yeah.
John Paul Jones sort of asserts himself in those two sections, and it's speaking of In the Light. I mean, you've mentioned kind of what it makes you think of. Every time I hear In the Light, I think of a time when this would have been, I was working for United Van Lines, and this would have been either the summer of like 1984 or 1985. I was going to college at the time, and I was home from college in Appleton, Wisconsin, where Mark and I grew up, and was working for this moving company. And I'd been out with this guy on a road trip about 2 weeks on the East Coast, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and we were coming back to Appleton, and we had to stop in Chicago and help another crew get a piano down from an apartment. In any case, took care of that.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was a real hoot. I mean, and the guys they were good guys that I was working with. It was good memories. But in any case, so it's like 8 at night, and we've been on the road for 2 weeks, and we leave from Chicago to go back up to Appleton. So we're not going to get up to Appleton. It turned out it was maybe it was later than 8 o'clock, because we didn't get back to Appleton until 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It was starting to get light. Yeah. But in any case, we're driving, and Joe, the driver, was so tired that he was playing music really loud, just to keep himself awake. And we were within an hour of Appleton, and WAPL was playing, and they played In the Light.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was on really loud on a radio in the semi truck that was probably about 15 years old in 1985.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the best sound. Yeah. But and you go through all those, because when it was turned up loud and it went from the intro into the, Jimmy Page in your face guitar, because that's a fairly aggressive guitar riff.
Yes.
In that. But that's so whenever I hear or talk about In the Light, I think of that. Highway 41. It's dark in the morning, trying to get home so we can go to sleep.
And I actually think, although I started listening to and thoroughly enjoying this album when we were in high school, where it really rang true to me was actually after I was in the service, and left home, and to me there is a feeling of being alone in this song. It's optimistic, but it's also sad. There's a loneliness that comes through some of the lyrics in this song, and that's probably the point in my life where it really just rang. I felt it, right? Not just the music and that type of thing, but that notion of, yeah, this is kind of where I'm at right now, right? It was looking towards the future. There's an optimism in the song, but there's absolutely a sad loneliness, and that whole idea of kind of coming to the end of this is kind of the sun is just coming up, we're tired. I can see that.
No.
There's a new day coming and I'm going to get to sleep soon, but right now, it's like let's just find our way home.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was a great song. Again, it's got some power to it, some loudness to it. Played loud is fine, but again, I've also had a number of points in my life where I really related to it.
No. And
So, go on.
just a comment on the, riff is a term we've mentioned, and I think the
Yes.
riffs are mostly in the Light and 10 Years Gone on side
Yeah.
side 3. But I would argue that all of all 6 songs on side 1 and 2 are heavily riff oriented.
Absolutely.
Custard Pie, definitely. The
Yeah.
Rover, same riff. In My Time of Dying is a little stretches out a little more than that. But I mean, all 3 songs on
Yeah.
side 2, House of the Holy,
Yeah.
Trampled Underfoot, Cashmere
Cashmere.
is the ultimate riff song.
Yes.
One could argue. And In the Light keeps that going.
Well, and Jimmy Page had an incredible ability to to take a riff, which is really just a sequence of not that many notes, a short piece of music, and create it in such a way where it could just be repeated, and it created the type of rhythm that could create just a great rock and roll song. It wasn't just it wasn't random. He had an ability to do this that other artists just did not. And to your point, some of these songs, I mean, were just completely based on the power of these riffs. And 10 Years Gone, In the Light that we just spoke about certainly was one, and 10 Years Gone when it comes to the end. But in between, our second song, we shift away from focusing on time, and we talk about a place, which is Bromyar, which was a place that the band had spent a lot of time in recording previous albums. In fact, this is one of the leftover songs from previous recordings. It was actually written about 4 years earlier. Again, with Jimmy Page, I can picture him sitting like they'd done some recording, and he walked outside and sat on a bench looking up at the quiet trees and the wind, smoking a cigarette, looking at this, and just think, what does this sound like, what I'm seeing right now? And that's what would have come out on this very quiet, but not slow. It moves along type acoustic guitar that I feel the wind in the trees when I'm listening to this song, and you can just feel that notion that this was a place that certainly Jimmy Page felt peace and the separation from some of the hecticness of society to allow them to create music.
It is a beautiful song, and the way you describe him playing it is apt, and that kind of Welsh forest, misty mountain vibe was kind of a big part of Led Zeppelin. It didn't rear its head in every song, but that was a big part of their kind of mystique, in my opinion. Kind of the mystical aspect of some of their songs, and as far as Jimmy Page's ability on acoustic guitar, for anybody that's interested, on the Led Zeppelin DVD, which has been out for a while, and that's got a lot of great material. And one of the high points, in my opinion, is the concerts from 1975. I believe they were recorded at Earl's Court venue in London in 1975. but there's an acoustic set that they do with Going to California, That's the Way, and Brahmyar Stomp from Led Zeppelin 3. And Jimmy Page is playing acoustic guitar during all of those. John Paul Jones plays some mandolin in some of those. But for anyone who wants to poke their nose deeper into the acoustic Led Zeppelin, though, that is well worth your time.
Awfully good.
Awfully good.
Well, we move from we move to something a little bit more, well, a lot more guitar oriented. Still not focused on heavy riffs, but Down by the Seaside, where again it is focused on the guitar. There's kind of almost an aquatic sounding tremolo kind of guitar feeling as this song starts in Down by the Seaside, and I can picture myself, down on a not so much like a beach, but like the sea, at the sea, and with the waves, and you almost feel yourself moving back and forth to this song. It's got a that kind of you can feel yourself rocking along to the song, and it's got a feel to it that is very, very appropriate based on the notion of Down by the Seaside.
Well, and what you say about aquatic but not beach is, these guys are from England, and going to the beach at Siesta Key, Florida, is not like going to the ocean in England, particularly if you get up into northern England or Scotland, stuff like that. And
much more rugged.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it's more of a craggy seaside type, where it doesn't have to be. In fact, it's almost not sunny. It's so I definitely agree that the feel that you get from the song, it evokes that kind of imagery. That's the imagery that the sound evokes in my mind as well.
And the at the same time, though, the song, like a lot of Led Zeppelin songs, is broken into different sections. It transitions into the middle of the song to a heavier kind of almost like an urgent. Although there's not like a intense drum beat, but it feels almost like a tribal, chant or dance that kind of moves you along, and it's as if this person is either back or thinking about being back in the more hecticness of life, and away from the seaside, and in like, how are you going to bring this tranquility of the sea back into this hecticness of life? And it provides some like almost like some advice. There's some words, do you still do the twist? Right? Are you still enjoying life? Are you still dancing? That's out there. Some folks go twisting every day, and it's like there's people around you that are still twisting every day. Are you? But it's kind of hard to tell. That's my interpretation of that. It's like, look, when we get back to this more hectic city life, let's call it, or whatever, we should still be dancing. And that's before the song then transitions back to the more seaside type vibe that it started with in the final section of the song.
Yeah, and I really don't have anything to add to that. But the word urgency was a good word to describe the feel of the bridge, you might call it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, that song is another one where it's unique within the Led Zeppelin catalog of songs.
Yes.
In the way it's arranged and feels to some extent.
Yeah.
But it is also, you listen to it and it's like it sounds like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And that was something that one of the reasons why they were such a good band is they had the ability to kind of come up with new things that weren't necessarily retreads of what they'd done in the past, but it still sounded like them.
Yes. Yes.
And it wasn't like, oh, well, we're trying some new things. it's like they were trying new things, but it still sounded like Led Zeppelin. They were able to
Yes.
they were able to use the same ingredients and put them together in different ways that broke new ground, but didn't sound unfamiliar to the audience. And
Yep.
Down by the Seaside's a good example of that.
Well, and this, and then to highlight again how this all comes together as a side. I mean, the way that they moved. You start out with Within the Light, and then move to this very soft acoustic piece that transitions very quickly. You can just hear the end of the last strum of the acoustic guitar on Brumyar hit, fade out, and you hear this drum that kicks off Down by the Seaside. It rolls very quickly and smoothly into this song, and then we transition out of this into the last song on the album, which is 10 Years Gone. And this song to me is very powerful. Where it gets at. Robert Plant has spoken many times about how he saw this as something that was very powerful to him. Basically, the music was done, and they handed it to him, and he put the lyrics of this together about a time in his life when he had to basically leave someone to pursue his musical career, and the whole notion of what would have been if I had made a different decision there. And really in an interview after the fact, talking about how if we'd get together now, we probably wouldn't really even know each other, potentially even like each other. He'd obviously gone in a very different direction. They probably wouldn't have had a whole lot in common. That doesn't mean that he didn't think about from time to time, what would happen. And myself, I see, on top of what is just, again, very powerful guitar riffs that get us into the song, and then take us through, and guitar to the very end of the song. Great musical beat. I really like it. It's from that perspective. It's right up there with a lot of very powerful songs that Led Zeppelin did. But this notion of there's things that we have in life, and we're going on for a period of years, and we assume, right, that something is either going to happen or is not going to happen. And when that changes on you, it really can crumble the foundations of everything that you're living in and what you saw life to be in the future. And I really hear that in this particular song. The idea of lyrics like, I never thought that I'd see your face the way it used to be, right? I never thought that I was going to see that. I thought that was gone. This idea of just a transition of what you assumed would be true. It's something I always liked about the song Fire and Rain by James Taylor. I always thought that I'd see you again. It's something that you had just assumed was going to be there or not be there, and suddenly that changes, and that's when it becomes so apparent how much time has passed in your life. And it's one thing to listen to this song when you're 16 years old, 17 years old, when we first started listening to this music. It's another thing to listen to it when you're 30. It's another thing to listen to it when you're 60, and it becomes, if anything, more powerful. The messaging from the song as time goes on, and that's just above and beyond a song that just sounds great to listen to. It switches back and forth, again, a couple different sections of getting a little bit more reflective, and then kicks right back into to a very powerful song and a very powerful ending, and a great bookend to a wonderful side of music.
Well, one of the powerful parts of the song is when the bridge comes in. Did you ever really need somebody, really need 'em bad?
Yeah.
And then Page just strums across all the strings.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just it is a, and it's got that sort of kind of little sloppy almost Zeppelin sound,
Yes.
but it has just a visceral, it makes a visceral connection, from the emotions that are being conveyed through the song lyrics by way of sound. by way of
Hmm.
the instrumental music itself. Um, uh,
Well, and it's
uh,
also very complex. If you look at the arrangements of this and moving back and forth in time sequences and very similar to like a lot of what Pink Floyd tried to do. I mean, really make some complex type of music. I was at some point I was taking a look at this song. There was like a web page of a person trying to explain to a guitar player like how to play this and what's happening with these chords. They had to use visuals about how the chords are moving back and forth and some of the time sequences are changing throughout the songs. And they actually after a while stopped performing it live. It was very difficult to perform live. You had
I
John Paul Jones with like a three neck guitar with
if
12 and 6 and a mandolin, and it was hard
if
to try and bring it out.
I I don't know if they ever performed it live.
They may not have. I'd read somewhere that they stopped performing it live. I don't. That implies to me
Well,
that
and
they'd at least given it a shot.
I mean, and and that detail doesn't matter. The bottom line is if it was in their repertoire on stage, it went away quickly.
Yes, yeah, because it was very complex, musically. I mean, from a scholarly study of music. I mean, this is something that would take some time to get your arms around, and you can sense that in the kind of the changes and places that the music is taking you, which to me is a sign of good music, that it's able to do that. However, it does it.
There is a YouTube video and possibly multiple YouTube videos available where some guitar player, some like some guy like you or I, if you or I could play electric guitar well,
Yeah.
who goes through, and it's like 30 minutes, or I don't know how, but
Yeah.
it takes a while, and so here's this classic rock fan with a Les Paul guitar, and starts playing, because even the relatively quiet intro, it's an electric guitar, not
Yes.
a acoustic guitar, and there's no other. It's just the guitar, and then you've got after that initial intro, which is very interesting, very
Yeah.
beautiful piece of music. Well, then the kind of John Bonham,
Yes.
Jimmy guitar, or Jimmy Page guitar riff comes in.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for someone who's curious to say, well, just how in the heck did they do this? I mean, there's a guy
Yeah.
that goes through it step by step, and here's what happens. Very interesting. And so, but it makes sense. You listen to that, and it's like, if they're going to play it live, they've either got to kind of change the instrumentation to make it more stage friendly,
Yeah.
or it's gonna sound screwy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just going to be, like you say, just logistically difficult to present on stage without bringing on additional musicians or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But and I can't remember when it was that I saw this YouTube video that I referred to, but once we started talking about this song, it came back to me very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's one of the more substantial compositions
Yeah.
that the band came up with, which is something to be said. If you're talking about Led Zeppelin, and I
Yes.
think it's a fair statement.
Yep. And it's very clear that, and I mean, a lot. It's not like they're the only. There's a lot of very good, very skilled musicians out there. But Led Zeppelin, clearly they didn't just sit and jam for a while and fall in to this music. There was a lot of thought and skill brought to structuring these songs. And although the riffs that we've talked about themselves can be very simple, if that's all you focus on, if that's all the songs were, they wouldn't have had the success that they did, and the quality of music. There's much more to the songs than just that, but they're there, and they're very Led Zeppelin. To hear it, and for most people that listen to any Led Zeppelin, you just have to hear that riff, right, which can take 4 seconds, and you now know the song and where it came from and exactly what the
Well,
situation is. They did it very well.
but they take Black Dog, for example. Opening
Hmm.
track on side one of Led Zeppelin 4.
Yes.
I mean, that song's like all just one big riff. I
Yes.
mean, the opening guitar is a riff. I mean, it takes more than
Yes.
4 seconds to get
Oh
out,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's pretty much the whole song. And then they
Hmm.
came up with the lyrics, but that's very compelling.
Yes.
And the material on Physical Graffiti, both the song that we're talking about and the other riff songs that we've mentioned, um, just it takes the riff and turns it into something substantial.
Yeah. And in this particular case, created a song that was the last song on side three of this album, and a great closing again. I really want to focus on the idea you can listen to these four songs. You can pick one. I mean, any one of them you can listen to by itself, but the experience of listening to the four of them together is its own experience. And although it was unique to the vinyl experience, you can obviously do it now. You can pick those four songs out, but this particular side was a great experience. And in that whole notion of, well, what do I want to listen to, this always popped to the top of my list. And whether it was, again, what who's going to put on the next side at a party, or what are we going to put on while we're getting this house cleaned up after the party, or just to sit at night in the dark before you go to sleep and listen to it. This side fit the bill on a lot of those, and one of the reasons that I put it as one of my favorite sides on any album by any band.
Well, I think it is worthy of that, and I mean, and let's face it, if you were attending one of the typical stoner beer parties, like when we were going to high school, the odds of you hearing Led Zeppelin Physical Graffiti pretty
Awfully
high.
good.
Awfully good.
Yeah. Yes, the chance of that.
So
Okay,
how about the
that
packaging? How about the
uh,
packaging?
yes, this, and again, the packaging of this was so complex it actually delayed the album, and the fact that they wanted to stick with it shows that it was intentional, what they were doing. This is actually a newer copy of the album. One of the problems with this packaging is it tended to wear and lose a little bit of its shape. But we've got a double album here, and the outer album itself takes a shape and is cut out. So this is a building, and that you can go online and find where this building is in New York. And then there's a number of pieces of artwork, whether it be the sleeves to the album that you could slide in. And now you've got people in these windows. It's very interesting, especially at the end of a night where, again, you've been to a stoner beer party to check out these pictures and identify them. Some of them are members of the band. Some of them are other pictures. There's also different sleeves that are in here that either have just blank windows. I'll slide this back in. Blank windows, or the actual labeling of the album as Physical Graffiti. So very interesting artwork. The album itself, unusual, and it was the first Swan Song album that Led Zeppelin put out. And not only was it the album itself very interesting to look at and to enjoy, but some fantastic music inside. And as we have just focused on, today's side three was one of them, and I'd encourage everybody to give it a listen.
Hear, hear.
All right, good show, Mike. We will talk soon. All right.
Sounds good, Mark.